Hello and welcome to that RC channel. Alright, today we're going to take a look at building some of these WPL metal axles. We have a set of the straight axles here and the Porter axle here. This set of axles is commonly found in the B16 series, or really any of the B series, I believe, trucks. This was the kit metal that came with it. It does look like a lot of parts. It is a lot of parts. But you just have to take your time and go through everything. So we'll show you everything we got on the table, and then we'll go through one by one, building each axle. So you've got your brass differential and pinion gears here, your covers, all your bearings, your paper gaskets for shimming. This particular set has 4 axles, 2 long ones, a third long one that's a little bit shorter, and an even shorter one. And that has to do with the intermediate power drive there. You get metal covers. You're gonna need Loctite grease. We got some toothpicks to apply the grease, a 1.5 millimeter hex driver. We don't like to use the Allen wrenches that are included because sometimes they round things out. So get a set of good tools if you're gonna be working on these things. A nice star tip screwdriver. You're going to need the knuckles. And we like to have the steering linkage so that we can control the knuckles together and find out where the actual limit points are. So what we're gonna do is we are gonna clear everything off and get this one front axle set up on a piece of paper to show you guys. Okay, we got everything laid out that you're pretty much gonna need for the front axle. Some gaskets, the cover, the knuckles, 4 big bearings, 4 small bearings, 2 spacers, drive shaft cup, pinion and ring gear, your 4 brass washers and spacers for the knuckles, the third longest shaft, the 2 joints for the end, your steering linkage, and your axle itself. So we're gonna get everything together now. First thing you're gonna do is take your axle, go ahead and open it up, set it down. Now on your differential or your pumpkin side here, it's gonna take 2 bearings in there. So just get one of them, stick them down there, and they push in pretty easily. Get the other one, stick it down there as well. Oh. All right. Now you should have 2 of them in there like that. The next thing you want to do is just go ahead and take your knuckles, put the bearings in there. And we're doing this just so we keep track of them, we don't lose any of the small parts. And again, they just snap right in there. Kind of just sitting there. They sit in there a little loose, so just be careful you don't lose them. Same thing as this. See how easy they pop out. And we got the 2 in there. We're actually 2 bearings short. We should have 2 more here, so let me grab those 2. All right, we're back. We got those 2 other bearings. The first area we're gonna work on getting set up is this little pumpkin cover area with the 2 bearings in it. What we like to do is we like to add a little bit of oil in there. And we're using a slight gun oil. You can really use any 3-in-1 oil. And you just want to get a little bit in there on that bearing in there. And then one of these little tiny spacers here that come in the package, you can get them on the store, or you can get them they come in the kit metal package. Just drop one of those in there. And then use a little tool or something to get it over there, and see that's going to be a spacer on top of that bearing to ride. And then we're just going to do a little bit of oil on there as well, and we'll use the grease on the actual gear itself, but I like to put oil inside of here. And now that that's in there, just give it a couple spins, And you should have no binding or anything. Everything should be smooth, smooth. So we'll add just a drop here on the shaft, just to make sure everything's smooth. And as you can see, everything is very smooth. So now on the other side, we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna drop a couple drops of oil on here. And we're gonna put that other spacer on there. Just like that. Now we have that on there. You're gonna find the flat spot and go ahead and get your drive shaft cup, the end cup. What we wanna do is we wanna get it on there. We just wanna snug it down. We don't wanna tighten it all the way. Just kinda get it in the groove to where you can slide it a little bit. And then what we wanna do is just apply light pressure with your fingers and collapse them together. You know, you don't want heavy pressure, but just light pressure should do. And that's gonna allow everything to seat. And when that happens, you should have a smooth spinning pinion gear. And that's where a lot of your slack's taken out of, is the in and out with people getting grinding gears we've seen. So you just wanna go ahead and make sure this whole thing spins freely. And when it spins freely and you think it's good, back that little screw out and put a dot of Loctite in there and tighten this down. It does not have to be cranked all the way down. Just screw it down and just a little bit tighter and leave it and let it dry for about 5 minutes and we'll come back. Okay, now that the pumpkin and pinion is dry and set, you can see if we take it and spin it, how it just spins freely. That's what you're going for. Free spinning, no in and out play. Everything's tight as far as in and out goes, and the cover spins freely on it. Once you have that set up, you can set this aside. The next thing we're gonna work on is the main axle housing here. You're usually gonna have two sides, a painted and a non-painted. The painted side we like to put on the side where the drive shaft is gonna be. So that'll allow for a little bit more spacing out from the ring and pinion and all that. So with that set, the small side here is facing the left. We're gonna take the top off. Now you have to be aware of how your shaft orientation is. This is the smaller side, so it goes on this side, and how your ring and pinion gear are gonna sit in there. So we'll get everything slid on there and show you how it looks. Okay, we have the axle set up right now. We have 4 bearings on there, 2 on each side, and we attached the ring gear, but as you can see, we left it loose so you can slide left and right, and very little movement up and down. You want left and right movement loose so that you can self-adjust this. The next thing we're gonna do is just slide these all the way in, and now we're gonna put these universal joints on there. And you want these things all the way on. So we'll get these things on now. Okay, once you have the U-joints in there, go ahead and just take it and spin it. Make sure that everything's rolling smoothly. And then we're gonna go ahead and put the top section on here. So we got that top section in. You're gonna make sure that everything fits down on there nicely and everything sits flush the way it's supposed to. Sometimes things don't wanna sit too flush. There we go. And you're gonna check for any binding or anything. If you get any binding, take it back apart and recheck everything. Okay, at this point, you should be able to just rock the axle and see how smooth that is. Everything is very smooth in there. You should have no binding at this point. Everything should be free, smooth turning. All right, the very next thing we're gonna put on is the outside knuckles here. Now remember, you're going to want to make sure this is in the right area. So we're gonna go ahead and no, what we'll do first is we'll put the outside cover on first. We'll do that first. All right, we got just 2 bolts shoved in there for now with the cover. And again, as you see, very smooth. Everything still rocks smooth. And as you can see, we still have the side-to-side play in that center ring gear. Now we're gonna go ahead and wanna put the knuckles on the outside here. All right, we got the knuckles on with the brass inserts and the screws. Again, every step of the way you're checking. Up to this point, everything should be butter smooth. Absolutely no binding, no metal, clicking, nothing. Buttery smooth the whole way. Now what needs to happen is we're gonna go ahead and put the tie rod assembly on here to keep the wheel straight so we can check the articulation while spinning. Okay, we got the tie rod on there. Everything's looking good, it's feeling beefy, so again, see how smooth that is and quiet. We're gonna go ahead and turn it and articulate it. No binding at all. And again, no binding at all. Now, if you go full turn and lock, there's gonna be some binding, but the steering servo will never lock it full that way unless you have a really long throw, and then you'll end up jamming up these joints in there. So about right there. Oh, one of those bearings fell out. But everything is buttery smooth. So now the next thing you're gonna work on is sticking on this rear pumpkin area here with the cover. There's a space, how it's like spaced offset on the side, and that's offset. You want them to, mesh properly. So one by one, you'll sit here and you'll put this on here. It's a slow and painful process, but you're gonna go ahead and put this on there. Get this gear lined up in there. Make sure everything pops on. Let me back these screws out real quick. They're probably binding up a little bit. All right, we back the screws out. Now the case is sitting flush. And we'll just let those bearings drop out for now. It's not a big deal. That's not gonna affect anything. So what you're gonna wanna do is tighten it all the way down. And we're only using 2 screws. Using 2 screws is fine. You just want them across from each other to make sure there's equal load on it. And again, this is all done dry. You're doing everything dry until the final setup. All right. So everything's in there. And if you hear, now there's a little bit of binding. Just a little bit. Nothing too serious. The axle's already very smooth, as you can see, but we can hear a little bit of binding, and that's where these paper gaskets come into play. So you're gonna be taking the cover on and off one by one, adding a gasket, until you get a nice smooth spin from each one of the points. Here, as you can see, it's different, and here. So you wanna work on getting all that spaced out and smoothed out, so we're gonna do that now. All right, so we ended up putting in about 6 or 7 of those little paper gaskets. You see that white space in there now? And as you can hear, the thing is butter smooth. And that's what you want, and this is dry. This is with no lube yet. Everything's nice and smooth, and all you hear is the brass riding on itself with no lube. But this thing is so smooth. And to show you guys, look at that. Just the weight of the axle spins itself. So we're not done yet. Now that you've found kind of where your preset is, you're gonna have to pull this front cover back off, because you remember we left that little differential ring gear bolt there loose. So we're gonna pull this front cover off. Now we have access back to this. And don't let your pinion gear fall off, but that's how the gaskets look. So we're gonna get this thing back on there. All right, so while holding this, we're just gonna give it some rotations. Let it kind of seat itself. And then we're gonna take that screw and we're gonna back it out and we're gonna Loctite it in. All right, so what we did was we just put 2 screws back in there to hold this rear pumpkin back in, and we Loctited that screw down. Now, as you can see, if we hold it, it will spin very easily. There are no issues with it. Both ways spin, and you always want to constantly check for binding. That little bit of noise you hear is just the gears riding on themselves dry. But other than that, that is your setup. That is how to obtain these perfect style axles with everything. So they will wear down a little bit. We want to go ahead and grease everything, take everything apart, grease it, Loctite everything. We'll get it back together and see how it performs. All right, there is the front portal, whatever they're called, axles assembled. You want to go ahead and spin each point that can spin and make sure everything's smooth. You're gonna hear a little bit of noise and have just ever so slightly a little bit of binding. Nothing that's gonna stop you from overcoming it. That's because the gears are brand new and they need to be worn in. As you can see, everything here twists fine. And a good way to check it is just to hold the axle out, because one side's heavier. Hold the axle out and you see it just falls. And it just spins. And that's how you know that your axles are good to go. Now again, you want to check the side-to-side articulation here. At full bump, you're not going to get any turns. You see how it bumps off there? Just turn it to full bump, slightly turn it, and you'll see it'll bump off there. And that's the limit. Everything's still spinning nice and smooth, and then the same thing the other way. As you can see, it bumped off there, and now everything's smooth. So that does it for the front axle. We'll move on to the rear axles now. All right, moving on to the rearmost axle now. We're gonna go ahead and start working on that one, but we did forget to mention that you can install these backwards. So just make sure that you have the differential on the correct side when you're installing these. So this is the front axle, and the instructions show the short side being on the passenger side of the truck. So if you're looking at it, it'll be on your left side. And everything's still smooth. Now we're going on to the rearmost axle, and the short side will be on the left side here, just like the front. All right, we're gonna get this thing set up here. This is one of the longer shafts. There's 2 of them. So you just wanna go ahead and lay it out here and see which way it's gonna sit. So this is the shorter side of the axle. We're gonna take one of those pinion gears, and the flat side is gonna be on the short side. Get that on there. We'll slide 2 of these little bearings on there on each side. All right, after that, locate the center area and just tighten down the grub screw lightly. Again, like the front, you want to be able to slide this back and forth, but you don't want it to be able to turn around. So just go ahead and tighten it down slightly. There we are. Now we can move left and right. And that's so you can set the preload on this thing. There we go. Now again, the painted side we want to use as part of the spacing for the pinion gear. So that'll be facing us. We'll go ahead and just set this down in here and make sure everything spins smoothly. Make sure you get everything in the proper seats. All right, now that everything's in, you can see that it spins smooth. So the next thing we're gonna work on is getting these wheel adapter hexes on the end. So take a look at this one, it's not cut all the way to the end. So we want to go ahead and stick it on there and see how that axle's moving. We're going to want to kind of center these things on here. So right about there, we'll set it for now. And again, don't tighten this one, just snug it down. Now we'll move to the other side, do the same thing. Again, just snugging it down. Check again to make sure that everything spins smoothly. Everything does. So we want to go ahead and basically take all the slack out of this, push it as much as we can down and in, and just snug this down real quick. So that's snug down, and now we want to push it the other way up and all the way down as well. And again, you're not holding it super tight, you're just holding it so it don't move. Once those two are snug, you're trying to eliminate as much as the side-to-side play as you can in there. As you can see now, we don't have any axle play side to side, but we do have the ring gear play in there, which is what we want. And again, you should be spinning freely. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the axle, put the other half on. Again, consistently checking and making sure everything spins. The rear axle is a little simpler, not having the knuckles. These are keyed, they go on one way, and that'll hold your axle closed for you. There you go. And again, checking. Make sure everything's spinning freely. This is dry, there's no lube on here. So this is spinning good. And we still have movement in the differential, or the ring gear. So what we want to do now, we want to work on the pumpkin. Push a bearing in. I'm going to push a bearing in over here too. And we'll get a little bit of grease on here so that we can shove this down inside there. There we go. Not too much is needed. Again, we're going to get one of these washers back down on here. Go ahead and send that in. And we'll spin it. Then we'll get another washer here. Stick it on there. And we're going to get the drive shaft end cap. Go ahead and hold the two together lightly and snug this down. And it should spin freely. If not, you can back it off just a hair and then go back again. And you go until you find it right where it spins nice and freely, because you don't want too much play in this thing. So right about there seems good. Snug it down, recheck. And again, you're going for feeling here. So you want to make sure that everything feels good. Something don't feel good, keep backing off until it does. And this one feels a little gritty, so we're gonna check it real quick. All right, we got the end fixed here. One of the little bearings was pushed out a little bit further than it should have been, so everything's smooth now, as you can see. So now we got this axle here, it's smooth. We still got the moving ring there. Now what we wanna do is, we wanna go ahead and get the pumpkin set on there. And same thing, you want to stack some gaskets on there, try it out. Stack some gaskets, try it out until you get that smooth, buttery spin. So let's get some gaskets on there and see. Okay, we got the front pumpkin on there and everything's set in. Again, we put some spacers in there. Every build's gonna be different, so try it out. We put about 6 of them in there. And as you can see, everything dry is spinning good. Check each one. Make sure everything spins good and free. A little bit of noise is okay. Again, these are brand new brass gears. They will wear in. And again, you check the balance test. Let's see. And there you go. It spins and freewheels on its own. Everything's smooth. So now, once you find everything smooth, take that grub screw back out, Loctite it on, take everything apart, lubricate everything, and put it back together. So we'll come back after we get all this stuff together. All right, the back axle is complete now. As you can see, it rotates smoothly. Again, that's just the brand new gears you hear. They'll wear in with the grease. Check each side, spin it left and right, and make sure it's good. Spin the center there. Again, we'll do the balance test here. As you can see, it does spin freely. And that's what you want. You want no binding and you want everything to spin freely. So we got the front and the rear axle done. Now we have to get the intermediate axle done. We'll get everything laid out. Okay, we have the intermediate axle here. This one's a bit more complex than any of the other axles because this has to get power from both sides and distribute power out. Essentially, it's got power coming in and it has to shoot power out. So there's a whole bunch of different setups that gotta go on. Adjusting this one's a bit harder as well. So first thing you wanna do is set up the rear axle just like the other axles. Get your 4 bearings on there. Get your brass ring on there and your 2 end pieces. Now this axle, while it's sitting in the truck looking at it, we are going to be like that. So we get that in there and then check it, make sure it spins good. So once you have made sure that it spins good inside here, Loctite these grub screws on the hex keys for the wheels. All right, now that we got the intermediate axle here assembled just like the rear axle was, I'm gonna go ahead and spin it, make sure everything is still smooth. Go ahead and set this aside. The next thing you want to do is go ahead and grab this shortest shaft here and go ahead and put this little gear on just like that. Slide it all the way over and you're going to go ahead and just spin this little nut down and go ahead and not snug it, but you're going to want to go ahead and just lightly tighten it just like the other ones because there's going to be some adjustment here. Now this one is going to be super hard to adjust once it's together, so you kind of got to get a feel for it at first and then just tighten everything down after you get a feel for it. So we'll just leave that on there loose. It's able to slide. We'll set that aside. Excuse me. Next thing you want to grab is this little plastic piece and you want to go ahead and just take the pinion gear with a bearing and a little spacer just like the other axles. And you want to send it in there. We're going to grease it up and everything. And we're going to put this other pinion on the other side. So we'll get that together real quick. All right, for the next part, you want to go ahead and just get the shaft, the small to the shaft here. Get a little bit of Loctite on that grub screw. And you're going to take this pumpkin cover here. Go ahead and put it through the opening. Go ahead and take the bearing. Put it on this side. This is how you're going to get your measurement. Okay. So, as you can see there, we have some sticking through, a little piece sticking through. That's how you want it. So we'll rotate this around here until we see the grub screw. And we'll just go ahead and hold this together with the bearing to keep that additional little lip there. And we're going to just go ahead and tighten the grub screw down. till it snugs it. Then just pull it out carefully and tighten that screw down and clean it all up and recheck. Okay, once you insert the shaft, as you see there, we still have that small little lip back there. Make sure you grease everything up, spin it. Everything should still be spinning freely. You're gonna go ahead and take the ring and pinion side here, and you're gonna go ahead and put a bearing on this end here, and you're gonna go ahead and set it inside of here. Okay, this is one area where you do not want to be shy with grease. We're gonna go ahead and you see that hole right there. We're gonna guide that rod through that hole and make sure the gears mesh inside. And sometimes you gotta rotate it a little bit and they'll eventually mesh up. And there they go. Get a nice tight seal, we'll spin it. Everything seems like it's spinning well. So we'll get this thing clamped together. All right, once you verified everything is spinning good, we're gonna go ahead and put some grease in this side here and get it back on the axle. All right, and that's the intermediate axle complete. This one will be significantly tighter than the other two axles, simply because there's more turning parts in here, but again, should rotate with no binding. You can take a wheel and stick it on there too if you wanna spin it. So everything is good. We'll get the cover put on it, get everything buttoned up, and wrap this one up. All right, once you have the axle complete, this is how it should look with the drive shaft cups on. And again, you want to spin it now. Like we said, this one will be a little bit tighter than the other two because there are some more gears in there, but you shouldn't get stuck anywhere. And any of the binding should be very, very, very light, but you should be able to overcome it. You see. All right, so that is the intermediate axle here. We've got the front axle here that we did already, which would be there. And then we have the rear axle here, which again, smooth running. So there we have it. The 6x6 wheel setup. Everything's even, if you see. Everything lines up pretty good. So yeah, stay tuned for the next episode when we get the body together and start getting this stuff mounted. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.